Wayne Blackwell. And this will be the beginning of our tape called The People and Stories of Washington County, and made by the Washington County Historical Society. And the first Washington Countyan that we have on our program today is Mrs. Ida Lee Bradley.
Thank you for introducing me. I am Ida Lee Wood Bradley. My late husband, Edmund Odell Bradley, also a Washington Countyan. I was born in Washington County in the town of Dunbar. My good friend here, Mr. Simeon Daniels, would like me to say this. I was born in Dunbar, Alabama. That is no longer a post office. Even nobody ever mentions it, actually. I don't guess anybody really knows. But this afternoon when Barbara called me the other day and asked me to do this and to get some other people who would, I thought of what I could tell. I didn't know anything humorous, so I thought of something that happened when I was a little girl there in Dunbar. My sister, and this was 1919, World War I had just been over about a year, and my sister Gladys started to school down under the hill. I don't know if the school was called Dunbar at that time or it was called Willie Reed Schoolhouse. Anyway, she began school, and one morning my mama came back in the room where the fireplace was and discovered Gladys had left a pencil. Well, that was, to you who may listen years from now, and you who are listening here in 1991 may wonder why a pencil was so important. But if you lived back then, you would know that pencils were hard to come by. If you went to school without one, you were in trouble. So Mama decided, she had a young child, a baby in arms, and she wasn't going to go down the hill to take it, so she commissioned me and my sister. Both of us were scared to death. We'd never been about a schoolhouse, although we'd probably played around this one many times before that, but we were scared to go. We got the pencil and started down the hill, and all was going well. Butterflies were tingling for both of us, and we got there. We thought somebody would come out. Nobody came out. This was an old store in which a man had lived in the back room. When we got there, there was nobody in the front room, and there was a porch out on the front. And nobody came out. We thought the teacher would be glad to see us, I guess, but nobody came. And my sister, who was a little bit more resourceful than I think we tapped maybe gently on the porch and nobody responded. So my sister, Samuela, turned around and got a lighter knot and gave it a rap on the door, and out came Miss Daisy Grimes. Miss Daisy, some of you may or may not remember, taught in this county for something like 40 or 50 years, I suspect, because she was quite young at that time. And we went in. She took us through that lonely room in the front, and back in there where I sat, I suspect somewhere in the teens, maybe 15 students. And my sister, and we were so scared, we looked around like little scared kittens and got out of there as quick as we could. And we got back to the house. Mom began to ask questions, and we didn't know a single answer. So, but we had delivered the pencil. Now that school, this was 1919. That was the last year that there was a school there. So I was to go to school the next year, and I got to go to the Milry school. It was called the Milry Consolidated School, and it was quite a building, the old white building we called. I know you've heard it referred to, Mr. Blackburn, as the old white building, and it was just great. We even had somebody to carry us there. All the people that had gone to Dunbar School, and I don't know how many years the school had been there. It must have been maybe 20, maybe longer than that, because people walked several miles, all the different directions, and came to the school. And that's why my mother came to Washington County to teach at that school in 1909 and married my father before leaving the county. And so the idea of consolidation came up in the county, and the schools were being built and the little schools being moved in, and we had a way to ride to school, although it didn't come all the way to our house. I don't know why. I guess the money ran out to get there. Mr. Hartsfield Causey drove a Model T. He made some sort of a school bus thing out of it, and I can't figure out, I didn't know they made top Model T trucks in that day. But anyway, it was a Model T, and on the back, he had built a body, and we scrambled up in there on some benches, and it was covered with black oilcloth. It was a pretty comfortable way to go to school. So I went to school there, and the first year, and on the first day, and this is about the conclusion of my tale, this day I was in the room. It was, if you knew that you entered the front door and down a corridor, and across the corridor on the left side there was a room, and I was in that room, and there were a whole lot of other children in there, and somebody gave me a book, and it was my aunt, Mrs. Andrew Wood, Aunt Minnie, was the teacher. And she gave me a book, and I thought she meant for me to read it. And I didn't know a lot of the words in it, so I'd have to go and ask her. I did it 3 or 4 times. When I'd get back to where I was sitting, somebody had gotten my seat. So when I got about the 4th time I made a journey and didn't get in the same seat, I saw her coming rapidly toward me with a pencil in her hand. It was a long yellow one. It wasn't a penny pencil like I'd carried down in Dunbar. It was this long yellow one. And she cracked me over the head as hard as she could, and she said, why don't you stay in the same place? And I tried to explain to her that somebody had gotten my seat, but it didn't seem to go over. So I called my little talk the legend of the 2 pencils. And although they were sort of bad start, it didn't deter me from continuing, because I spent most of my years teaching. And people who view this, you who view it today, those who will view it in years to come, 7 decades after 1919, when I carried the pencil to my sister, I'm here. So that puts my age at 77.
Where was Dunbar located? How would you describe it today?
Dunbar is on what is now County Road 11, goes by the school. The school is on that road, about 3 miles northwest of the school, following that road. It was probably called the Millery to Isney Road at that time. And that's where the post office at that time was located. And thank you. Good
Thank
day.
you.
I'm Simeon Daniels. I can never come up to what my friend there did about talking, but I was great-great-grandson. I am the great-great-grandson of Elisha Simpson, who was one settled in this around Millery about 1813. And best I can find out, he died and was buried in his yard there on south of Dunbar Creek, where the Highway 17 curves. And when they went to pave the highway, I understand they dug up his bones and moved him over in the woods, but there was no marker on his grave. He was a Revolutionary War qualified to be a soldier. He was a militiaman in North Carolina in Northampton County, and he served 3 months guarding a grist mill and 3 months somewhere else in North Carolina. And in his last 3 or 4 years of his life, he drew the astounding amount of $70 a year pension. So he died there on that south of Dunbar Creek, and probably got mail at Dunbar. And the Washams which were well known in that area too, was later on to be part of my family. My Elisha's son, John Powell, married a Washam. So it comes on down that way. The family, I don't suppose, made any outstanding people, but they all of them in each generation that there was a war, they served in the war between the states. There was 3 of them involved in it, and one of them came back after he'd been through all the battles and was in the vicinity of Dunbar there. That he went to collect his new wife's debts, and a man shot him after he'd been through the war. And then in World War I, S.B. Simpson was one of the family that served. And in World War II is S.B.'s son, and of course I was in it too. But the Simpsons about disappeared as to the name. They apparently won't be anymore. But there'll be some of them like me that's keen.
Well, tell us something about yourself, though. Are you working now or retired?
I'm retired from Olin Chemicals. I spent 3 years in the Navy and 4 years at Auburn and 34 and a half years at Olin. And I have 4 sons, and the youngest one is an electrical engineer from Auburn, and the next one is an employee of Delta Airlines, and the next old one works at Olin, Paul, and Reggie is a Bachelor of Science nurse, and he works in a hospital, and he's also a full lieutenant in the Naval Reserve.
Where did you attend schools in Washington County?
My children attended at Leroy, and of course I was honored by finishing up at Silas.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm Doris Jerry Brown, and I thought I might this afternoon tell you a little bit about the recreation of Chatham, which would be representative of the county. In my young years and in my teenage years, we unfortunately still at this point don't have a lot of things for recreation for children in our county. So many of them have got to have a car to get out and go anywhere, to movies or anything like that. But when as far back as I can remember, most of our recreation centered around the home and the school. When I was little, my home was, my mother, father just said, bring whoever you want to home. So our house was one of the several homes in Chatham that was open to all of the children at any time of the day or early part of the night that we wanted to invite anybody in. And we used to have a lot of parties, especially in the summertime. There would at least every other week. We had a party of some nature, and we usually had a theme for our parties. We had backwards parties and tacky parties and things of that nature. We cooked out a lot. In those days, you didn't go to the grocery store and buy your chicken. You went out in the chicken yard back of your mother's house and got the chicken and wrung its neck and dressed it, and then you cooked it outside. And needless to say, we ate a lot of half-done chicken because most of the time we never got it completely cooked. We did do sometimes at night on the mill pond at Jordan and Yarbo, we gigged frogs. And we cleaned them and dressed them and cooked them on the bank of the mill pond. And if you've never cooked frogs out like that, late in the afternoon or just dusk dark with a skillet, it's a lot of fun. Just remember to be sure and take the top to put on the skillet, because as the frog legs cook, the muscles move and they'll hop out of the skillet and into the dirt. We had that happen to us on several occasions. We just dipped them in the mill pond and rinsed them off and put them back in the skillet and finished cooking them. we had a theater at Yarbo, Alabama. Ingham Day Lumber Company had a big sawmill there, and they had a nice large building, and on Friday and Saturday nights they showed movies beginning, I think, before talking pictures came in, sometime in the 20s. The same building on Sunday was used for an interdenominational church and Sunday school. And many of the children that grew up at Yarbo, like my husband Cecil Brown, never knew really what denomination he was till he got grown, because one Sunday the Baptist preacher preached and the next Sunday the Methodist preacher preached. So it was, that's the way they had their church thing. But many of us remember very fond of those movies that we went to at Yarbo. Then along just in the latter part of the 30s, Mr. Waterall started a chain of theaters that included Citronelle and Leaksville and Chatham and several other places. And he carried his equipment in a truck. And the old American Legion building that burned not too long ago, and it was sitting where Ward's drive-in is now, was the building that he rented to show movies. Now, he showed his movies on Tuesday nights in Chatham. So we had, for a number of years, up until after the war, we could get to the movies on Tuesday night and then either on Friday or Saturday night. And you loaded up everybody. My mother would go and we would take everybody that we could get in the car, because there were not all that many cars, and if there'd be several mothers, usually mothers, sometimes daddies, and most of all the kids got to go to the movies, because if their mother or father didn't have a car or they couldn't go that night, they could always pile in with somebody else, and you piled in as many as you could safely drive the 6 miles up to Yarbo to the movie. After the war, Ingham Day closed their mill in 1945, so we no longer had that theater. And they showed the first run movies. Mr. Waterall's movies were more of the B-class movies. They were westerns, and a lot of them that type of movies, the old-timey serials of Tarzan and those type of things, and you just had to get there to see what had happened, you know, the little short, and they'd leave you right at something exciting, and next week that's where they'd start, so you wouldn't want to miss that part of the movie.
What did it cost to go to the movie?
Probably 5 or 10 cents. I don't remember really. It was very, very inexpensive. As we look back now, at that time it was probably close to as being expensive as a movie is now. Maybe not quite what it is now, but in keeping with everything else, it was fairly inexpensive. And the theater here in Chatham that Mr. Waterall had the folding seats, and they would move around, and of course and they had big fans, and they roared and made a noise, and you had to open all the windows in the summertime, and people would, if the building filled up, which it usually did, you'd have people standing on the outside looking through the windows at the movie. At Yarbo, the seats were all fastened down and had the seat folded up. When Cecil and I were dating, we had a friend of the family's that watched the back door to be sure nobody slipped in the back door. He saved the last 2 seats. He put his hat there, and then when Cecil and I got to the movie, he moved his hat so we could have the back 2 seats in the theater. But some of the other things that we did were swimming. That was one of our big things, especially in the summertime. And we had a favorite place to swim in Chatham. And there may be people who still use it occasionally, but it was called Richardson Swim Hole. It was in the Rutan community. And it was in a bend of the creek where it was a rather deep place. At one time, it was said nobody could jump off the diving board and touch the bottom. I think by the time we were all grown, maybe some of us had some of the boys had been able to touch the bottom. I understand it's filled in quite a bit now. Then the creek made another bend, and my mother and father and Dr. and Miss Kimbrough and Miss John Dickey and Brother Matt Jones and his wife and several other families, Mr. Fritz and Miss Bernice Shell and all, dammed up the creek at a ford. The ford was where you could, shallow enough you could drive your car across. And they dammed that up with rocks and sandbags to make a shallow swim place. So we had what we call the big hole and the little hole. And they built picnic tables, and on the west side of the creek was a big sand bed that we had. You would have thought we were at the Gulf. We had so much fun in the sand, playing in the sand. The churches, the Baptist church and several other Baptist churches in the area used that for baptizing. Quite often, our mothers and fathers would take us down to go swimming late in the afternoon. They drove the car right up to the edge of the creek and washed the car while we were swimming. And we'd have picnic suppers. The other swimming place that I remember fondly was called Sullivan's Lake, and it's where the motel is, and the bridge crosses Highway 43 at Wegable. It's just east of the bridge. And of course, we didn't get to go there very often. That was a big treat to go there because that was a little far. We did a lot of walking after we got up into riding bicycles. After we got up big enough to go swimming by ourselves, we rode our bicycles out to the creek and went. And the first day or two that it got warm enough to think about swimming, when we were little, the daddies would go out and cut off all the bushes and clean it up and kill a few snakes and all. Then when we became teenagers, and during the war years there were no cars to speak of. There were cars, but not enough gasoline to waste to take kids swimming. So we either walked or we rode our bicycles. And we would go out and take the hose and the axes and take a picnic lunch and all a bunch of the teenagers, and we'd clean off the creek banks and have it kind of clean and safe for the rest of the summer. The thing that sticks in my mind about Sullivan's Lake that I mentioned, it was on my 18th birthday. I was having a birthday party, and 3 of our boys, I can't remember the names right off, were home on leave from World War II. So a big group of us, probably 15 of us anyway, went over, had planned the party, my birthday party, to go over. And that was when the war was over in Japan, when my birthday's August 15th. And so we had double reason then to celebrate that day, and we had a big time. Most of us were well blistered by the time we got home. One of the other things that we did in Chatham particularly that might not have happened in some of the other communities in the county, when the WPA came in and put sidewalks in Chatham, and there have been very few additions to any of the sidewalks. The majority of the sidewalks in Chatham are still the sidewalks that the WPA built during those days. So one of the other recreational things was roller skating. And back in those days, we didn't have to worry about too many people on the sidewalk and very few cars on the streets, so we were fairly safe. And we spent many a Sunday afternoon skating around the courthouse. And it was kind of a trick to learn to turn the corners. You had to learn to grab the iron post. I had an iron fence, or picket fence around the courthouse at that time. And you had to learn to grab the post and swing around the corner, or either you went off the sidewalk and jumped about 3 steps and landed in the ditch or on the edge of the street, which a lot of us did with a lot of skinned knees and that sort of thing. That's where we were the afternoon that the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. There were 15 or 20 of us skating at the courthouse, and one of the boys came and told us what they'd heard on the radio, and of course we didn't believe it, but he quickly broke up the skating party, and everybody went home to talk with the parents and be sure that what he was telling us was the truth. I sometimes feel like that the kids now miss an awful lot by not having the recreation that we did. they are more inclined to want money and a car and go somewhere. When we came along, we made our own recreation, and we had to be creative about it to keep it from being boring. And therefore, I think we had a much better time at times, and we were much closer. Most of the kids were the same kids that were in Sunday school and church at the Methodist and the Baptist churches. And we were a close-knit group and formed real strong bonds of friendship, which I think, have lasted better maybe than some of our children's friendships will now, because so many people scatter out. There's still a lot of that particular group, of my age group, that are still in and around, and I think would remember, as I do, very fondly our days of skating, swimming, and partying in Chatham.
Would you name some of the people that you grew up with?
Betty, Vicky, Gene Shell and his brothers, they were, Clarence and Sidney were a little bit younger. Daisy Dumas and her sister Frances, she was a carpenter, and Inez, the other sister. Worry Loper, her daddy was, for a while, was deputy sheriff. The Lyons family lived where the Scott house is now, and there were two girls my age, Mary and Betty. There were children in and out through WPA times and through the CCC camp times that we made friends with. There were the Bud and Virginia Mills. One of my good friends was Martha Hurst, and her brother Pierre. She was Martha Pelham, and her brother Pierre Pelham. And then Johnny Catherine Leggett, whose mother ran one of the boarding houses in town. And I'm sure I'm leaving out quite a number of them. Gene probably could help me fill in on that list. He's a year or two younger, but we didn't have very strict dividing lines as to ages. Everybody just got together. Nancy Grenade was one, and about twice a year, Ms. Grenade let Nancy have a big party, and she never left out anybody. Every child in town, from anyways a year or two younger than our crowd to a year or two older than our crowd, was invited to the party at the Grenade house, and Mrs. Grenade always had the most delicious refreshments fixed and decorated and had a theme for the party, and that was always a treat. We looked forward to the parties that Miss Grenade had for Nancy every year.
My name is Theodore Bowling Pearson, and I'm 86 years old. I live in Leroy, Alabama, on the farm that I was raised on, and it's 20 miles from Chatham to Leroy, or Leroy to Chatham, whichever way you were going. And today, Mr. Daniels, who's a fellow member of the Historical Association with us, we came out here from Leroy in about 25 minutes. When I was 15 years old, it took me a part of 2 days and all night to get from Chatham to Leroy. And the circumstances were as follows. I was a student here in the Washington County High School, 1920, fall of 1920, because the Washington County High School at Chatham was the only accredited school in Washington County. And I had finished the 10th grade at Pine Grove School in Leroy, which is now Leroy High School. And to finish school, an accredited high school, so that I could qualify for college, my folks sent me out here to boarding school. In the school at the same time was a girl named Lily Sullivan. whose brother is here in the audience today. And in October, one Friday afternoon, I looked out from the dormitory and I saw Mr. Gibb Sullivan there in a buggy with two little mules hooked to it. It wasn't a buggy with shaft, it had a pole and two little mules hooked to it. And Lily was getting into the buggy, and I asked, and I knew they lived just on Bassett's Creek, just 5 miles from Leroy, and I figured if I could get within 5 miles of Leroy, I could make it the rest of the way home and spend the week end at home is the same as Lily was going to do, because that's what a reason her father came for. And this buggy, little buggy, was without a top and it's kind of box shaped, and there was room behind the seat for somebody to stand or to put in some luggage or something. And so I went with Mr. Sullivan and Lily to their home with this buggy with the two little mules. One of them was a buckskin named Kit, and the other one was a spotted named Spot. And Mr. Sullivan lived at Clearwater on the St. Stephen's side of the bridge across Bassett's Creek there. And I spent the night with him. And also spending the night was Mr. Sid Sullivan, who was Miss Gibby Sullivan's brother. He was there on his way to Leroy with a bale of cotton, two mules hitched to a wagon. So Mr. Sid Sullivan and I shared the same bed at Mr. Gibby Sullivan's there that night, and I went into Leroy the next morning on this bale of cotton and got off right in front of my house. And of course on Sunday afternoon we had a T-model Ford my father brought me back to Chatham. Another thing, I don't remember what we had for supper that night at Mr. Sullivan's house, but the next morning for breakfast, one of the items of food was biscuit sliced in half and fried in molasses. And I thought that was the best stuff I'd eaten in a long time. And when I got home, I told Mama about it, and she said, yeah, that's called sticky. And so, so for several mornings after that, I had my mother make me some sticky.
Okay, well, thank you. That's very interesting.
I'm D.K. Sullivan, and I live in Wagerville, but I was raised on Bassett's Creek, up above Wagerville, 2 miles. And the most interesting thing that I know of right in that area was I was raised in Bassett's Creek, where she mentioned the swimming hole, Sullivan's Lake. That was my great-grandfather's home. But my great-grandfather on my father's side was Gideon J. Sullivan. He was a Civil War veteran, and Theodore's father and grandfather, I think, both fought with him. And his old home, I wanted it for years. I finally got it. It's a log house. It's a big house. It's old. It was built shortly after the Civil War. And
Can you describe where it's located exactly?
it's on Bassett's Creek, about a half a mile, less than a half a mile off of Highway 43. And
It's on the north side of Bassett's Creek.
on the north side of Bassett's Creek, something like 3/10 of a mile from the creek. There's 2 branches. It's on a ridge with a branch on each side of it. It goes into Bassett's Creek right near it. And to me, that home is sacred. I wanted it for years, and I was finally able to get a hold of it. I own it. And family and my friends are having a party there this afternoon. And anybody that wants to come out and have a party, I have plenty of chairs and tables and so forth, and they're welcome. And the old home it's in bad disrepair, but for instance, the roof doesn't leak a drop. And
Can you tell us about it being built?
about when it was built,
Yeah. Pinpoint it a little bit.
my great-grandfather, shortly after he came back from the Civil War, he built the house. And that's how old it is. Let's see, I'd say between 1865 and 1870 is when it was built. It was about, I would say, around 1870, closer probably. And it's
It's an old dog trot log
that's right.
house.
It had what they call a dog trot. Now, the dog didn't have a thing to do with it. They put what we call a hole through it. In hot weather, air passes through it. That's the purpose of that. It wasn't no place for the dogs to go. They went under the house. But the air circulates through that hole. I can go up there right now. I can go up there. I don't miss too many days in a week going up there, but it's just for a few minutes. I keep the grounds all mowed and I keep it up. And that hole is just kind of like having air conditioning in that house. It cools it a whole lot. But no, I don't mean to say that it would cool it as well as an air conditioner. That would be absurd. But that was the purpose of the hallway, what we call a hallway. Yankees named it Dog Trot.
Tell them about the cooling board, Doc.
Oh yeah, there's one thing. There's one thing the people, whenever they had a death in a family, they had a kind of a thing, something about some of this table about half that long, and it was homemade, and it was made to fit on the wagon when a person died. The body was placed on this board and prepared for burial. And then they would put that board on a wagon. It's notches cut in it. They're down now. I'd be glad if anybody would come out and see it anytime you want to. And they would place the coffin on that board, on the wagon, and haul it to the cemetery. That's about all I can say.
Anyone have any questions?
Yeah, what they call it, the cooling board.
Well, I'm Bernice Carpenter, Bernice Hoffman Carpenter. I was born in Millry. Went to school in Millry when the principal was Mr. Red Smith. That's many years ago. And as Idley was talking about the school bus, we had a wagon. I can remember riding, it was a wagon with a top over it, so that we rode to school. I was about a mile out of Millry, but when we got a little older, we walked because there was no other way to get there but walk to school. And my first year in school, from what my brother used to tell me, was I guess, acted like a baby. I'd go to school and cry, and he'd have to bring me home. But anyway, I finally did stay all day long. I went to school, graduated from Millry. And I can remember when the highway was put through Millry. I don't know where, no one mentioned that. But Mr. Flowers was the man that built that highway, because the roads then were nothing but sand, and we played in the road building sandcastles with our bare feet. So, but I do remember when the highway was put through here by Mr. Flowers from St. Petersburg, Florida.
What year would that be?
oh dear, let me see, it would have to be in the early
About
20, it was before 1930, it was before the Depression of 1929. It would have to be then, because I well remember going to the shows in Yarborough that she talked about, and those things. And then I do think Mr. Waterall put a one in Millry too, when he was bringing them around. But it had to be before the Depression of 1929. And I finished high school in Millry, and then I got married and lived in St. Petersburg, Florida. And I tried to find a Mr. Flowers. His name was, he had a daughter named Iva Flowers, and an Irving Flower was his son. And I know we played together a lot and went to the movies in Yarborough a lot, but I never could find him. So, but I grew up in Millry and lived here until when my husband retired. We moved back to Millry, so I've been here now back home for about 20 years, and I'm living on some of my dad's property on the Copeland Road, Millry, 1 mile within the city limits.
Worship you and me. Okay.
Well, I'm Wayne Blackwell of the Washington County Historical Society, and we're in St. Stephen's, Alabama, November the 17th, 1991, and we're working on our tape of people and stories of Washington County. At this time, we've got Mr. Rufus Odom that will come and talk to us. Beach, excuse me.
Well, I come to this town in 1918. I was 10 years old. And my father was J.Z. Beach. I'm sure Mr. Shelter remembers him and all. And we was in the sawmill business, and we was this, that, and the other. And during the Depression, we tried to do of everything. Paperwork, anything. Farming, sold cotton for 5 cents a pound. And, but somehow or another, we got slid through. And St. Stephen seems to be on the growing side instead of like the Lorenzo Dow put the curse on it. This St. Stephen's, just around 900 people through our post office, and we have fire department, and we have nutrition center, and everything like that. We figure we're trying to get, on the map. And St. Stephen's, we realize, have more history than any other. This side of this whole town has more history than any other county in the state, I think. And if we'd be helpful in any way, be glad to do it. I've been down there when you could pick up most any old thing you wanted, arrowheads and all stuff like that. I have an old flowers made there, we made. First one thing, then the other. And above all, we'd like to, I've mentioned it several times, we'd like to have the museum in St. Stephen. That's where the history started. And I spoke to some about it, and so it was on some that want people coming through it, wanting to get the history and see old town, and we have to tell them the museum go beyond 20 miles. It don't fit too good. But I reckon that's the way the drop fell. And that's about all I can tell you. I grew up and married this old here 58 years ago, Dixie Island. We have 3 children and a slew of grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And that's about all. I went to grammar school I started grammar school in the 2nd grade in St. Stephen. And that was I reckon that was about they taught to the 10th grade. Then I went 2 years at Leroy.
Where was the school located in St. Stephen's?
It was located quarter of a mile down here where let's see, where the third house is, right there, 2-story. I think we have a picture of it over there. And it was located, that's where, I know you've heard of the famous judge and all the lawyers and things, those fellows. And we're standing on the site where 3 doctors, Dr. Kimbrough and all of them come from. And this is their old home place, right here. And then I went to Leroy 2 years. First football team I was on it.
What year was that?
That was in 29.
Who was your
That
coach?
was the year Theodore Pearson took over, went to school that year. Theodore Pearson was our coach. And I noticed most all of them went to the office and lived in Porter down here. And I don't know, during the Depression, we managed some way to exist. I don't know how it was.
Who were some of the teachers here at St. Stephen's?
We had he was a one-armed principal, and Mrs. Steele was in there, and Mrs. Hurley Utsey, you probably know her. And she could hit hard with the switch, I'm telling you. And Miss Corbin, and we had well, I could just name them all if I just had time to figure them out. Miss Buna Prince, she taught here, I'd say, at least 6 years. She lived down here, Miss Buna did, and she taught here. And then McKelvey and Ford. It's just a slew of them. There's a bunch of them in there. And St. Stephen then seemed to be a little more flourisher than it was. Had more stores, and on Saturday night you couldn't hardly get through up here. People gathered to throw knives and just talk, and if they had any dispute out in the woods then, they'd fight out.
Was fighting part of the entertainment?
I've seen a good many, and but all told, we think we got a good town now, and everything's coming out good.
Did y'all have school buses back then?
Yeah, they had school buses when I went to school, yeah.
What about lunchroom?
That's on the first, and they ran from Silver Cross in. And it was, at one time, St. Stephen was twice or 3 times as large a school as Leroy. But when they consolidated, come in and built this high school, that was.
What were some of the schools they consolidated to Leroy? Do you remember?
Pardon?
Some of the schools that was consolidated to Leroy?
Went to school to Leroy.
Some of the schools they closed and moved over to Leroy.
Oh, I don't know, there was a school.
There was one of them right when that Robert, the largest one they put there, and there was a little one over, where the Possum Corner Road turned over up there, just up on that hill there, Johnson
My
School.
first grade was at Hobson.
Johnson School, I had a road there, right where it went up in.
Yeah, I didn't quite understand it. And then we had a little school out here in the Stoker settlement on the Stoker Road. And then we had a school at Digby. And a school, the Leroy School back them days was just a little shotgun shack right where the Preston Road ends on the right there. We call it the Preston Road. I see our commissioner's got it marked as Pruitt Road, but really it's the Preston Road. It led down right into Preston. And Sawmill, Mr. Faith was a sawmill man for years here. And I was about told it all, and the churches went on good.
What was your job in the sawmill? What was your job in the sawmill?
I owned a sawmill,
And
just a tie mill during the Depression, and my job was to try to make that dollar to pay the men on the side.
Do you remember what the salaries were during those
I
times?
remember what cross, 7 by 9 cross ties was then. My best tie was 45 cents, and today it's about $11. And the best grade of lumber, if you showed so much heart, like these cross ones that we used to cut, that best grade was $13. And stumpage was just bad, your giveaway. Paper wood, 50 cents cord stumpage.
This was the 1930s?
That's in the 30s, yeah. And things like that. Of course, I wasn't the only one, but I worked with a good many people, and thank the good Lord I didn't know of anything when it went on down, and I went to trucking. I trucked for several years. I tried several different fields of work, and somehow or another I managed to get by somewhere. My farm down here, we live on the farm now, the old place, you know, where you, and that's about all of it. Hope you don't surprise it.
My name is Joseph Alston. My mother was Louise Alston. My father's name was Willie Alston. My grandfather's name was A.C. Howell and Wilma Alston. Grandmother was Bolter Howell and Rachel Mitchell. We had 14 children in my family, 7 boys and 7 girls. And I went to school at St. Stephen's. We had a school up the road about a mile, a little over a mile from here. That's where I went to school for 9 years. And during my 9 years of going to school at St. Stephen's Black School up there, we had 3 teachers up there. Well, first we had 2. Some of you probably know Miss Annie Purwell. She took over when her brother left, Mr. Ozzie Z. Well, I believe they call him. We call him Mr. Well. He left and went to Jennifer Benz. And at that time, when he left and went to Jennifer Benz, Miss Mamie Johnson, she came there and she taught. And then Mr. Charles Umstead, he taught a while. I think he taught when Miss Johnson was on leave or something. And then we had 3 teachers later on, Miss Fanny P. Johnson. And during those years I went to St. Stephen's School, my year made my own money, what I had to spend. During the time I worked for Mr. Beverly Wilson, he was a farmer. And me and my brother went up there both morning and evening and work on. We went up there morning before the school, and he would always give us a dime or 25 cents. Back then, I got a lot of gray and a bald head, but I ain't too old. But we went up there and worked 10 to 25 cents. And back then, like I said, a whole lot of money. And soon as school got out, he was coming to pick it up again. This was 7 days a week. And also on Sunday morning, he would take me up there to make up there, help his sister make a bed because there were 3 widows stayed in the house. Miss Mary Lou Grill, Mr. L.J. Wilson, and Mr. Beverly Wilson. When I worked up there, and during the time we couldn't play too much sports because every time we turned around, they were blowing the home for us to go. And we got some good learning at St. Stephen's School. We always have said from the 1st to the 9th grade, I got all my learning at St. Stephen's. Because when I went to Presbury 10th grade. I went to Presbury to stay there the 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. My principal down there was Mr. Walter B. Taylor. And one of my fifth grade teacher was Miss Gaston. I think she's Lane now. And we had Miss Craw, Miss L.D. Woodyard, and Mr. Fisher was my FFA teacher. And and back then when you didn't catch too many ladies basketball coach. Miss Gaston was basketball coach down there for probably 20 years almost. And you know, we've seen a whole lot of changes made back in the 1970s. I think that when St. Stephen's School got cut out, and this when all the integration took place. But a year before the integration took place, I think in 1969, when my brother, Alfred Alston, and my sister, Catherine Alston, and Leroy Williams, and different one had to go to Leroy School. You know, and so but Presbyterian School was still going on at this time, but St. Stephen's School was cut out, and you know, it was kind of hard on the children when they was going to the white school. You know, it was rough. And I can remember because at this time, I was working at Seaver Gag. And I went to Seaver Gag in 1967. And I was getting paid at that time $2.15 labor. And then I finally went up to assistant operator a little while. I worked. That was $2.73 an hour. And I thank the Lord for staying there as long as I have. I moved up to the top in production as a chief operator, and that was high as I could go. And 4 years ago, they cut the chief operators out, and they got all operators now. And I've been down in Geiger going on 25 years. And you know, I've seen a whole lot of things and change from, I hate to go back, but I've seen a lot of things change when I was a boy coming up. Me and my sister and them, we used to go out and pick cotton and help Mama with the bill. I appreciate my father. I hope a lot of y'all know my father. My father was kind of alcoholic. In other words, he didn't worry about paying nobody, and that's what Mama had to do. And back during this time, we went out and we picked cotton. It was probably 5 or 6 of us in the cotton field at one time. And so I just look back at what the children have to do now. Back when I was a boy, we had to carry water from up on the spring, go in the woods and get loud and cut woods. And the children now, they don't have nothing to do. And then, I look back at when I was in school, we had prayer. That's the first thing we had in the morning time. We had prayer and we had devotion and all this. And then I look at the young men and young ladies that came over to me, and most of them are doing a good job now. And then I look back and see why do they want to take prayer out of school? Because otherwise, anything that prayer in, it got to be a help. It can't hurt nothing. And and a lot of mornings I had went to school barefoot. It's just things that I done seen coming up to now that it's a big change. I know everyone here done seen a big change in their life. And like I said, I ain't too old, but I've seen a whole lot of change in this community when I used to see where Hattie Alston could look in the church and wink her eye at one child, and they were hushed. And James Alston, that was her husband. And and A.C. Howard, he would like the grandchildren do anything wrong, he would whoop anybody's children. And all them times and gone where you better not put your hand on nobody's child. And I got 4 kids. I should have talked about them a little bit before now, but I got four children. And I also had a son that served over in Saudi Arabia during the war. He was a tanker out. So I was at the house one day as I heard him tell somebody, say, before I had to go back over there, I would shoot myself in the face. So I can imagine, and we assume how bad it was, but we just don't know. But but I've seen a whole lot of changes in St. Stephen, where the white and the black wouldn't be here today 20 or 25 years ago. So, we are blessed, and that's about all I got to say. But, we don't have a whole lot of good people in St. Stephen, both white and black. Even with the Staples, the Wilson, the Fade. St. Stephen got a whole lot of good people in St. Stephen. And Emmett Crown Feller, he was my uncle. Annette Bowles. We done just had a lot of good people, from around here, we also done had some good, black Africans that come out of St. Steve, like when I came along, just say if it would been like it is now, that, it ain't no telling how many boys would have been in pro baseball and basketball. We didn't have a football team during the whole time I went to school. I think they started the football team in McIntosh probably 1967 or 68. But personally, we never did have a football team. And, I just look at the boys down in Leroy today that, they playing both white and black. They just show you what that you can do, with, if you want to get out there and play. I just thank you. I got 4 children, like I said a while ago. My oldest son is Joseph Anthony Allison. My daughter is Pamela Lynette Allison. I got a son named is Famous Allison. And my daughter's name is Renata Allison. And my wife's name is Debbie Allison. Her mother's name is Emma Todd, and her father's name is Hoover Todd. She don't have no brother or no sister. Thank you.
Well, we had what we call a cement plant. It was just a quarry, is all it was, and they mined it there, and then they boated it to New Orleans. I worked there 4 years with them. Like God let you quit. So it paid around 30 cents, and
When was this? Now, what year?
that was in the 30s. They didn't, I don't believe they ever come below 30 cents an hour. And then during about the time World War II started, and from about 36 on, that's when they went to paying Social Security, and they raised to 40 cents. I was that then. And it was a great help to the people of this side of the county, don't you see then. I expect they worked about 25 men, but I expect about 12 of them was from St. Stephen, and they could depend on groceries for Saturday, don't you see. That's where it come in, and it was operated there, was a good, profitable business, over in the Lone Star. And now it's, what's that name? The Ford. Now it's Ford from Tuscaloosa, bought it out, and they're trucking. They 7 or 8 trucks that stuff out of there. They mine it over there. Mr. Bailey has that end of it from down here at Corby. Jack Allen and Mr. Moser, the Petro has the trucks on that. They like the oil. And that's what goes on down there now, except a lot of good fishing. And that's about
And it's Dixie Beach. And I was born and raised in Coffeyville, Alabama. And my daddy was a farmer, and he moved to Washington County and farmed for Mr. Millage Mose for 2 years. So I met this guy just spoke, Rufus Beach. And I went to school at Leroy to Mr. Joseph Paul and Mr. Theodore Pearson. So my mother and daddy moved to Theodore. They was gonna move on Monday. So this guy told me, let's get married on Sunday. So we got married on Sunday. We went to Chowder with Judge Turner. And what was Miss Turner's name? Miss Van and Judge Turner. And their daughter. And my sister-in-law, Dora Gordy, married Mr. Will Gordy, Robert B. Gordy's brother. And my sister-in-law,
What year was that?
1932. And Dora had a child at 5 months old. She kept crying. So every now and then when I get kind of cross for my husband, I say, that child's trying to tell me something. Don't marry Luther speech. So, at St. Stephen, I've been here. Me and Rufus will be married 60 years, the 3rd day of January. And during the Depression, we had 3 stores of St. Stephen. Mr. Roy McNeil, Mr. Ron Bowman, Mr. Lonnie Stable. Mr. Lonnie Stable had the post office. And Mr. C. Smith had Gristmill, and my husband helped him with that. And I have 3 children. One lives in Monroe, Louisiana, Dolores Brown, and Jimmy Beats in Jackson, Alabama, and Ray Beats lives in Leroy. And I'm just proud to be here. My nerves run away with me a lot. But we used to have some good times going to the old lot and have picnics, have babies down there under the shade tree. Rufus would catch fish, we'd cook them. But now all the gates are closed. You can't go anywhere. You're doing good if you stay home. You haven't got a gate. So, I belong to St. Stephen Methodist Church, and we have some good people here. I miss Miss Mary Lou Ridley, Miss Annette Wilson, Mr. Henry, Mr. What's that other Wilson man's name? Mr. Madison Wilson, Mr. Helen Wilson, and all those old people, I still miss them. I'm 79 years old. So, I'm proud of Alexander. I'm proud of all you people. If y'all come and visit us some more, I hope you understood what I was trying to say.
I'd like to say my name is Essie B. Williams, wife of L.J. Williams, and we both were born and raised right here in St. Stephen. We've lived here all our lives. I never got to go to Leroy or Prestwick School, but I did go to St. Stephen Junior High, and I quit school at an early age and met L.J. Williams. I quit school at an early age and got married when I was 16. But I did go back to adult school and took the GED test and passed it, so I do have a GED certificate. And I must say that I am proud. I don't know whether I'm proud that I married that early, but I can't say that I regret it because times was hard, but it seemed like when you look back, they were very easy. We just don't know how we got over it. Jobs was real scarce. My husband worked here and there, wherever he could get a place to work. For $4 and $5 a day, whatever he could do. And when cotton chopping and cotton picking time, that's when I helped out. If his job wasn't working on days, we chopped cotton right side by side in the cotton fields, picked cotton, picked peas, gathered okra, whatever it was. Because we had a large family. We raised 8 children, and he wasn't choicy and picky about the work. All he wanted to do was somebody to give him something to do. If it was cutting grass or whatever. And he always tells the young people now, he said, you all just ought to come along when I did. He was glad to get whatever you could get to make an honest living. So,
What year did y'all get married?
1950. And that was when jobs was real scarce. But anyway, he believed in training his children to work. He always had chores for them to do before and after school. He'd get them up at 5 o'clock in the morning. And I thought that was terrible. I thought that was so hard on them. But now I can appreciate it because we don't have one that don't have a job now. They're all working, thanks be to the good Lord. He didn't believe in them staying out of school. He gave them work to do every day, and they never missed a day out of school. And he saw every last one of them through high school, and every last one have a college degree, and we are thankful for that. Now, we didn't send them to college because we were too poor to do that, but they was ambitious enough, and I think they wanted to get out from under the fuss of their daddy because he was on fuss if they didn't do something, so they worked their way through schools. They got small loans and grants and work sturdy jobs at college, And so now they all are working, and I can give the credit to my husband because he always told them when he had to get up out of the bed and go to work down to see the guy at 11 o'clock at night. It would be so cold sometimes you hate to leave. So y'all better go to school and get a lunch if you don't want to have to do like I'm doing. So they took him at his word. So we are very proud that we came, I say, the poor way. You know, it's a blessing to have been poor because a lot of people that's born with a silver spoon, they just don't know what living is all about. I feel like we had more fun then in the cotton fields. We didn't even know how hard the work was, how hot the sun was, because we always had something to talk about. Everybody was just talking about what they done last night. If it wasn't nothing but we parts of peanuts and we roast potatoes and ashes, and we just sit around there and had a good time. So I'm just so thankful to be able to say I'm proud of not only my children, but all of the children that has seemed to have taken pattern. Our children were some of the first of their generation to start to go to college, and it seemed like it was like an epidemic. It just took on, and everybody started to send their children to college, which nowadays is necessary. Back when we come along, we can do anything to make a living, but you can't do it now. So we are so thankful for my husband and the teachers that taught the children, Mr. Earl Fisher, Miss Rosemary Woodyard, Mr. W.B. Taylor, Miss Maeva Holcomb, and Mr. Thurman Preston Pruitt, before that was up at the early days in junior high school. They would always encourage children to learn to work, do your work well, but stay in school and get an education. And nowadays that is very necessary because they won't even give you an interview if you don't have a high school diploma. So I would just like to say we're just thankful to be here. We're thankful for Mr. Blackman. I wasn't intending to get up. Did I say it right? Your name. To say anything because I'm not a public speaker. But I'm just glad to have said that I'm glad that we helped to make a high point in the history of St. Stephen's. Our children, Mr. Joe Aston mentioned while ago, was one of the first to go to school at Leroy after integration, and he said it was hard. And we could understand it. We had talked to our children before they went, so it's not going to be easy because these people are not used to you all, and you all just have to look over there. Don't get angry, just stay there and learn what you can. And so most all of them graduated with honors because we taught them and we tried to keep them abreast of what was to look for. So we can be thankful to not only the black teacher, but a lot of the white teachers was inspirational to them, such as Miss Alberta Melton, Mr. Joe Palmer, and Miss Ethel Hartley. All of those was, and Mr. Jimmy Wilkins. They were all helpful and encouraging to help the children get adjusted. So I'm just thankful to be a witness that I know when it wasn't integration, and I know when it was. And I was able to accept it and live through it all. We didn't get in any fights and arguments with anybody. We just all lived together. So I just said we got a good bunch of people to have to live with around here. We just had to learn each other a little more better than we did in the past. So I just thank you all for this little time, and I'm just speaking these few words on behalf of L.J. Williams because he wouldn't miss this meeting for anything except he's sick in the bed. But he's a natural born historian, and that's what he loves to talk about.
Would you name your children for us?
We have my oldest, Alfred Williams, Clyde Wayne Williams, Leroy J. Williams Jr., Tommy Carroll Williams, Clara Jean Williams. I'm not giving them the married names. Got so many. Elizabeth Ann Williams, James Carlton Williams, and Michael T. Williams. Those are our 8 children. And we raised one for my niece, which was Gussie Williams. She also finished college.
Where do you attend church?
I attend church at James Chapel Baptist Church right there up the road, just a little piece. And my pastor is Reverend Harold F. Raines.
Okay, today on our tape, continuing with the history of Washington County, we have Ms. Maggie Cater and several other people from the area of Malcolm, Alabama, that's going to be talking with us. And our first guest will be Mrs. Cater. Ms. Cater, if you will, tell us how the name Malcolm originated.
Malcolm was named for Malcolm McCray, who lived in Calvert. He was a Calvert citizen.
Okay, do you know what year it became Malcolm?
I do not. I do not.
Do you know
In the
when?
1800s, or was I don't know, the late 1800s.
When did you move here, or were you born here?
No, I came here October 1925, and I've been here ever since.
Okay, and your father ran the general store here?
My father-in-law had a store here, and then at the present time, my grandson is operating.
And what do you remember about the development of Malcolm?
I didn't understand.
What do you remember about the development of Malcolm?
Well, it's been slow, but it's been a happy life.
When were the roads paved here?
So,
When were the roads first paved in Malcolm? Do you remember?
no, I don't recall, not right off.
Do you remember the development of Bates's Lake, the
It was-
fishing?
It was
Counts.
here when I came here. Of course, it wasn't settled near as well as it is today.
What was your name before you married?
Stanford, Maggie Stanford, Choctaw County,
Where in Choctaw County?
Bleeding Springs.
And you attended school where?
I finished school at Chatham in 1925.
Did you go to school with Mr. Pearson?
I worked with him. He was the boss man.
And you went and you taught school how long?
Oh, good, 40 years.
And where did you teach?
1 year in Malcolm, the first year. I had just one teacher, about 30-something children in all grades. And then I went from there in 29 to McIntosh, and I stayed there for 30 years. Then I went back to Calvert and stayed the other 9, gave me 40.
And where was the school located in Malcolm?
Down where you cross the railroad, it was down below there a little bit, where you cross the railroad down there. Just a one-room building.
Is there anything there now?
5 with wood.
Where was it located? Was it at this place in McIntosh that you taught?
Well.
Now where it is today, the high school?
You mean when I went up there to teach?
Yes.
My first year there was in an old dwelling. It wasn't in a schoolhouse.
Who were some of the students you taught? Do you remember?
Still, I taught Dartys and Harris's. Well, just all of them up there and all of them around. For 30 years I was there, so I covered quite a bit of ground.
When did you get married?
And 26, 13th of January.
And your husband was who?
James Franz Cater.
Does anyone else have any questions? Would you mind giving us your age now? I know you told me the other day.
It's
So
getting personal, but
Could I interrupt just a minute?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Cater, wasn't Malcolm named after Mr. Malcolm McRae? He was the first postmaster in Malcolm. One of the reasons they named it Malcolm from Redbird. This was
No.
Redbird Community First. Wasn't he the first postmaster?
He wasn't the postmaster here. Mr. Cater was from 1903 on, and then Franz Cater, my husband, and then my daughter, Ann.
Well, did they not have a,
Malcolm
did they have a
McRae
post
was-
office before then?
Huh?
They didn't have a post office before then?
As far as I know, they started up here at Eli Nichols, Mr. Bob Jones, you want to give me all of that. And Mr. Keeler, my father-in-law, bought the old store that they had up the railroad, they called it Redbud. And they moved it down to where the store is now. And that's how Malcolm got going from there.
When did it move down to where it is now? The store?
Now,
When did it move down there, do you remember?
oh, no, not exactly.
Okay. Any other questions, or? Okay, what year did you retire from teaching?
In 1968.
All right, would you care to make any comments on Mr. Pearson while we got him?
He's a good boss man. He let us to have our own way. We do right.
Okay, do you remember anything about the churches around here, when they were built, or when they first started, what was first, or?
Well, this building was one I found here in the beginning, and then the educational building over there was later, and it was built by the people here mostly.
In 1992, is Malcolm larger or smaller than it was when you moved here in 1925?
You mean, is it large?
In population?
It's bigger now than it was, as far as I know. I know it is.
Were there ever any sawmills here?
At one time, they had one down near the railroad, a little ways faster where you cross the railroad down there. My husband had a sawmill there.
What was it called?
It's just a sawmill.
Did most of the people live along the railroad then?
So,
Did most of the people live along the railroad tracks?
no, they're pretty well located now where they were the older families, you know. They haven't moved a whole lot either way.
Okay, any other questions?
Tell them about the Methodist church, Brandon.
The what?
The Methodist church.
Oh, well, you want that? We
Everything.
had a Methodist church over too, right before, after you cross the railroad down there on the Baker's Lake Road, there was a Methodist church there. And they had it in the afternoon, and then they had church up here in the morning, but we didn't have church every Sunday back then, because we couldn't pay the preacher. But anyhow, they had theirs in the afternoon, a lot of the services, and we went to that. And Crawford Knapp, mother, did a lot of playing. We had no organ.
Okay. Well, thank you. And
I'm Joyce Powell. My connection with the Malcolm Baptist Church is that I married Miss Caden's nephew in 1954 and became a member of this church. We have been interested in working up history of the Malcolm Church, and I've looked back through some of the records that have been passed on to me by Mrs. Maud Powell's son. The oldest record that we have in here is that Mr. Herbert Kelly, who at one time owned the land that the church is on, as well as I think the Knapps owned it at one time. But the oldest record that we have is that he joined the church by letter on August the 3rd, 1883. I remember from coming to the homecomings up here that Miss Maddie Kelly Moore would always tell us about the church and when it was being built when she was 4 years old. And I remember that she told me that she joined the church here in 1890 when she was 9 years old. And if she said that the church was being built when she was 4, so that would have made it probably about 1895, somewhere along there. And she said whenever they came home at night after they had worked on the church, they would ask, how much did you get done today? They were all very interested in seeing the progress of this church. And she also told us that the church before then was across the creek, the church building. I see Mary Humphrey back there nodding her head at me, so maybe she can help me with this. I wish I had had enough sense to take down all the notes that Ms. Moore gave me, but I didn't. But trying to reconstruct some of the things that she said, Charles and I found an old county map. And across the Bates Creek, up close to where the bridge is now, there was a plot of land that said Red Bud Baptist Church. Well, we have looked into that now, and that was not, of course, it does not belong to this church now. But it was, apparently that was where the original church was located. And I don't know anything about the building, anything like that. But I do remember that when she was 4 years old, that this building was built. The name of the church had to be officially changed in October the 10th, 1965, when we borrowed a small amount of money to build this educational building. We found that it was still the Red Bud Baptist Church, and we had to go officially in business meeting and change it to the Malcolm Baptist Church. In 1976, when we were doing our celebration here at the church, we had a letter from Howard Jones, who had been a member of this church. He joined here. His mother was a Sunday school teacher here. His father was a deacon. Page doesn't seem to be here. But at one time, I believe he was pastor of this church. Was he? Mary, I believe he was pastor when your mother and father and all those joined the church. But, and I'm thinking that Howard was ordained in this church too. Said at the time the church was organized, the community was called Red Bud, Alabama. Trains stopped then at the crossing going up to Miss Blanche Orsaw's home. The lumber to build the church was delivered to that crossing. Unless paint has hidden it in the words Red Bud, Alabama could be seen on a ceiling board near the middle of the church. The original church membership was widely scattered. Some came from Fairford, Liberty, Calvert, McIntosh, and across the creek. Do you have anyone old enough to know where that is without explanation? Venda and Jenny Dillard lived across the creek, down the road past Mr. John Olson's home across Paulby Creek. Church was held once a month because the membership was so widely scattered. Families came by wagon and on foot to spend the weekend with friends or relatives. Church services were conducted on Saturday and Sunday. There was usually a business session on Saturday. Little effort was made to win souls except during revival. And he goes on to tell the earliest pastor that he remembered was Brother Jordan, who lived at Mount Vernon and worked in the sawmill. The first piano owned by the church was given by the Herman Jones family. The church gave his daughter, May, the old organ that had been used for so many years. Miss Mary Gunn, a Methodist, was the first pianist. She played while Kenneth Orsaw was learning from Miss Ola Webb. I'll have to stop in Howard's letter here and tell you the first time I came to Malcolm, I remember Mary Claire Jones, maybe I saw Miss Mary Gunn play the piano. Two people, there's one on each side painting her while she was playing this organ. Of course, we can't get an air conditioner or painting. Somewhere in the list of pastors should be Brother Jones from Chatham. He was there in the 1930s. Once in cleaning out the old pulpit, a scrap of paper was found, and it listed the offering for that year was $4.36 for the entire year. Brother H.H. Harwell, who is now deceased, has written a book, Missions in Motion. I'm sure most of you are familiar with it. And it gives a history of the Mobile Baptist Association. And in that history was some information on the Red Bud Baptist Church. In 1892, and there's a gap in some of their records, but in 1892, W. Parker was listed as pastor of Red Bud Baptist Church. And in 1895, the Red Bud Church requested a letter of dismissal to join the Antioch Baptist Association. And I don't know, it said it was Redbud, Washington County, and I don't know anything about the Antioch Baptist Association. I'm not much, I haven't known much farther than 1895. But the Mobile Baptist Association has given us permission to come down and look at their records, and also the Baptist State Executive Board has the records, and they will let us use them. And trying to reconstruct it, try to go back and find out exactly how old the church is.
Well, George was not this entire area in the Providence Association at one time.
Yes. The whole, Mobile, Washington County, Baldwin County, Mississippi, some churches in Mississippi, and I think it was called the Gulf Coast Baptist Association at one time, and I don't know whether the Redbud Baptist Church was in that or not.
What did you say the name of the church was before it was Malcolm Baptist Church?
Redbud Baptist Church.
What?
Redbud, like the flower, redbud.
Redbud.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
I'm Lincoln Jenkins. I came to Malcolm in July of 1961. I married a Decatur daughter, Ann, and we have one son whose name is Tony. And since I've been here at Malcolm, we have had some paved road from the railroad track down Howard Basin Lake and up here by the church. And this has been about 25 years ago. And at the present time, they are talking about adding about 3 more miles to this. So that's about the way Malcolm has grown since I've been here.
That was about 1965.
It's about 65 when they made it. And now they're in the process of paving 2 or 3 more miles on Base Lake. Where Tony had a store down at Miss Taylor talked about a while ago, when I came here, that's what the post office was at, right in the corner of the store, had a little grocery store in there, the post office. And since that time, we have built a smaller post office just across the railroad track where it stands. And I've enjoyed living here at Malcolm, but people talking about the moving about here, they pretty well have been, the same group here since I've been here.
Where do you work?
I work at Olin Chemicals, McIntosh. I've been working there for 33 years.
I'm Tony Jenkins. My grandmother was Maggie Kagan. My father, you just saw on tape, was Lincoln. My mother, Ann, who was unable to be here. Malcolm hasn't really changed a whole lot since I was born here. Lived here all my life. Far back as I remember, the roads were paved, and except for now, we're adding some new pavement. I wanted some of the earlier families, if you wanted some of that on there. Would you like to get some of the earlier families? I'll talk from my grandmother, who was unable to talk because of nerve problems in her face, and I've worked with her a lot on history. Has been, well, the Nichols, Joneses, Stallworths, Orsaws, Knapps, Caters, and that's some of them. That's not all of them, but that's some of the earlier families that I know of that were here in Malcolm when it changed over from Redbud to Malcolm. The first store in Malcolm was right up here. You go out, go up the railroad tracks, was the Nichols store, and which later moved down to where the present day store is. I run the store today here in Malcolm. I'm fourth generation in it. It was started somewhere around 1900. The present building was built in about 1934 or 35. The first one was destroyed by fire. And some of the people that was here during that time can remember that my grandfather had a grist mill across the street from the store. And it was during syrup season. and they had just big barrels of syrup in there, and they said you could hear it exploding from all over, even down the river. And the other store was built from timbers off of our property and hand sawn across the road on the sawmill and reconstructed. This church here, one of the things that I found fascinating about this church, if you look on the floor, you have the 1x12 boards. The walls of this church are also constructed of those boards, and it's just plaster on top of them. There's no filler in between. And that's something real unique. You don't normally see that, especially nowadays in houses. And didn't see it in too many during that time. And I'm starting to ramble now. I don't want to tell any dates I'm not sure of, so that's about all I have.
Tony, do you know, or Lincoln, when the home Miss Cater lives in, when it was
Yes, it was completed in 1910. It was built by James Barton Cater. They had an open house at the home at the time it was built. Children over 12 years old was charged, children under 12 were not charged. Adults were charged 25 cents to come. And they had a regular program that lasted probably 2 or 3 hours, and we have a copy of that program in the foyer of the home now. I guess one of the oldest homes that's in Malcolm would probably be the Orsaw home where Gary Humphrey lives now, or either the Nichols home right here on the railroad, what's left of it.
Does anyone know when the school closed here?
It would probably have been right after the first year my grandmother taught school, but I'm not sure, because what didn't it close that year?
That was
So that would have been 1925 or 26.
37 when it closed.
What year?
37.
1937?
37.
She came here.
They moved it to Calvin.
Arthur Brown, talked to the lady, Arthur Brown was school teacher in 1937.
Yeah. There was a school to the right of the church.
That was before this one we talked about.
Before this, years ago, there was a school here. And then Miss Ellen Jones has told me recently that she went to school in the house that we live in. I didn't realize that.
Daddy went to school at this, what is, right there where Miss,
Don't your son live right there?
They opened it.
oh, right there.
He's
Daddy
got
went to
some
school
old
right
brick in the house. They picked up old man, put in it when he was building.
Okay, thank you, Tony.
My name is Dewey Knapp. I was born in Malcolm, November 20th, 1926. I lived here until 1941. I moved to Saraland, where I now reside. I frequently visit Malcolm. My stepmother lives at the old Knapp place, which is Daddy tore the old house down and built the present house there. And part of the old house that he tore down was a log cabin that Grandpa had bought and boarded up over these huge hand-hewed timbers that was cut by slaves, and we were put together with wooden pins. And Grandpa lived there till he passed away, and then Daddy bought the old place and reconstructed the house. And while I'm mentioning it, I don't want to forget, we're talking about Malcolm Baptist Church and Methodist Church. There was 2 more churches here, or colored people that went, and one of them was named St. Luke, which is over beyond where Mr. John also lived, Miss Beanie Smith. And then the other one is Big John Baptist Church, which is the colored church down on the Bates Lake Road. And I don't know how long it's been there, but I was told that my granddad gave them the land for what this present church is, and also the cemetery. And I was told from my dad that where the
Methodist church, the Malcolm Methodist church was, my granddaddy donated that land to the church. But he didn't attend the Baptist church here. I think he attended the Methodist church from what I was told. He passed away before I was born, and but he buried out at Liberty, where he was, I believe that was his home place. My granddaddy was George Deersnap. At one time, he had a store in Malcolm. Maybe y'all don't remember it, but right pretty close to where my stepmother lives now, Grandpa had a little store there. And I remember Daddy telling me that he used to go to Mobile, get your train down and go down and buy a dozen pair of overalls for $8 and come back and sell them for $12. He made 50 cents a pair or something like that on old Panama overalls. And he had a little store there, and if I knew you thought about it, I believe my stepmother still has some of the records of where Granddaddy run the store. And of course, it would be embarrassing to some people, and I don't think none of the people here today, because some of them had run up a considerable, at that time, a considerable amount of money that they owed Grandpa that when he passed away, that never was collected. But anyway, that'd be that what it is. But Grandpa had a little store down there, and he sold overalls and things like that. And of course, he was a farmer, and he farmed down on Bates Lake, across the lake from what they call the Bates Place, Bilbo's Island. And he owned several hundreds of acres of land down in that, on Bates Lake, and Paul By Creek, and across the lake, and portion of Bilbo Island. He used to raise cows and hogs and farmed and did those kind of things what farmers did back in those days. And at the time of his death, he was living on top of the hill at what they call Barn Landing at Bates Lake. He got sick, of course. I think he died in the hospital, but he was living down there in that old camp, which still stands there. His old barn is still out there on the south side of the where his camp place was, and then he had a blacksmith shop there. And then down below the blacksmith shop, I'm saying possibly a quarter, maybe a half a mile, he used to have what they call a garden place. That's where he used to raise vegetables and things there when they were farming on the river. And I was told by Dad and several others that used to be an Indian cemetery. That some at times they had plowed up bones there where they had buried. It used to be tribes of Indians used to live on that property at Bates Lake, and that was an Indian graveyard. And at that during that time, of course, they didn't have the society and all they have now, where they protect cemeteries and things, and they used that as a garden place where you raise vegetables there, and it was one that was called an Indian cemetery. And that's about all I can remember. Think of it.
Do you know why your family came here originally?
Not really. I do remember one other thing I want to mention. I told your dad out there in the cemetery a few months ago that grandmother, her name was Frances Ella Knapp, and she was born in, she was a Pringle, but she married Grandpa Knapp, George Deersnap, and he was the father of several children. I can't remember right off now how many, but anyway, I remember the story she used to tell us that she was just a little girl during the Civil War, and she was living out near Liberty out there, and she told us about one time when the Union soldiers came through, and this was in the, I guess about the second or third year of the Civil War, and she and the children, the girls, of course the boys that was old enough to carry a gun, they were in this Confederate Army, and they were there with a mother and the girls and maybe some of the small children, and the Union soldiers came by, And they took everything in the house that they had, the silverware, everything they had eatable. And she said that they had a cow, a milk cow, that they had hid, they thought she was hid down at the spring where they got water. And said they went down there and they milked the cow first, and then they killed her and for the meat that was in her, and left them with nothing to eat, and they like to starve to death. They just didn't have anything hardly to eat. And so the time was kind of tough back those days. And I remember her telling me that when I was just a little boy, and that's about it.
What was your mother's maiden name?
My mother's name was Edna Clark. She was raised out at Sims Chapel. Of course, my dad was, and by the way, my mother used to work for Mr. J.B. Cater, Miss Cater's father-in-law. She was working for him when she and my dad married, and I believe that was 1914 or 15, when she used to work for Mr. Cater, used to cook and do housework for him. She was doing that kind of work when she and my dad married. His daddy was a farmer, and he lived here all of his life, and he often said that he wanted to go to heaven, but he wanted to go by Malcolm on the way to heaven. That's how much he loved Malcolm. And he got his wish. He died in December 21st, 1980. He was in the suburban hospital down in Satsuma, and he told me he wanted to go home. He had cancer, and he wanted to go home. And I talked to his doctor, Dr. Roger Green, and Dr. Green informed me that he'd be just as well at home as he would down there, because it wasn't really nothing they could do for him. And it just, the only difference it would be inconvenience for us to look at him. My stepmother agreed that she would take that task on to look after him and wait on him. And a week after that, he passed away, and so he got his wish. He got to come by Malcolm on his way to heaven.
What did you say your father's name was?
Vernon Lee Knapp.
And he's buried right out there.
He's buried right out here in the cemetery. My mother's buried out there. I have three brothers that's buried out there. And of course my grandmother and 2 or 3 uncles that's buried out there in the cemetery. And,
Where did you go to school?
I went to school at Calvert till 1936, the year my mother passed away. And then we went to school at Malcolm. And then the next year, in 1937, they closed the Malcolm School, and it didn't exist anymore. All the children, they got a bus, and we started going to Calvert School. And I remember Mr. Pearson came by at Malcolm School down there when I was down there, and he had a brand new 1937 Chevrolet. And I thought that was the prettiest car I ever seen in my life.
Thank you.
What they did with the bones that they found in the garden?
No, I just heard my daddy talk about him, and I never did see him. But he had told me that used to be the old Indian cemetery down there. It's about I'm saying a half a mile south of where Grandpa's old camp used to be there, and his old barn is on top of the hill out there.
Could you identify that place now?
Yes, ma'am, I can.
I can't. I guess it's been 50 years since I've been down there. I don't know.
Actually, I'm Crawford Knapp. I was born and raised in Malcolm, Alabama, born March 24th, 1928. I've been here all my life. My dad was born and raised in Malcolm, Alabama. My grandfather came to Malcolm, Alabama, I'm saying in the early 1900s. One thing I'd like to say about Malcolm, a lot of people, as well as myself, has left Malcolm as a younger person to try to survive a livelihood. But most of us always have a desire to come back. There's something about it that we all learn to love and appreciate. And being raised here all my life, I never will forget February 29th, 1936. I was 6 years old, near 7. my mother passed away. During that time was when the first little Cater store down here had just recently been destroyed by fire. And that little store was being operated in the Cater home, which still exists. In the front room, which was a parlor, most all homes back then had parlors, a place to live in. And the store was being run in the parlor of the Cater home, 1936. And Miss Minnie Powell was working there. George Dewey, my brother, came to the little store about 11 o'clock in the day. And Miss Minnie Powell gave us a red to basic cycle. I'll never forget it. There's memories in Malcolm, Alabama that people, once ever lived here, don't forget. It has history beyond. And it's our responsibility to carry on. And without people being interested, as people are here today, the people that are here today, if it wasn't for this type of people, a majority of our heritage, our history, would be forgotten forever. And I feel that it's our responsibility. When we were small children in this area, there was no electricity, there were no paved roads, there was no running water, no electric lights, but we survived.
Do you remember when the electricity first came to Mount?
Exactly, I don't. I really don't remember the exact time. I remember very well that we didn't have it for a long time, but I don't remember the dates.
Does anyone remember that?
I believe it's 1948.
48?
First day of April.
April of 48. All right, and then that's one of the modern conveniences that we have that we just take for granted now, but if you lived before then, it was more than just a convenience to have it. Before then, we had a kerosene refrigerator. We had a Delco light plant system to furnish lights and kerosene lamps. And this church used to have a wooden heater in the center of the church with a blue pipe went out the top, and it had wall hanger kerosene lamps. Before we had electricity. I remember it well.
When did you move back here?
Be 30 years ago, the 1st of February, next month.
It would be 1962.
Right. 1962, I moved back here. I left as a 13-year-old boy. Caught the Southern Railroad train, used to be the Hummingbird, came through every afternoon. Rode to Sugarland, I had a brother live there. I went and lived with him. And I rode from here to Sugarland on the Hummingbird, or the Thunderbird, I believe it was. Goldenrod train for 35 cents. And when we were boys attending Calvert School, when we could get a dime to go to a school function at school, we'd ride the train from here to Calvert for a dime. And most times walk back at night after the play or whatever with school. But we enjoyed it. We all survived it. And now it's history.
You had a number of trains came through every day.
We had a passing train once a day each way, north and south. In the morning going north, roughly, 8:30, 8 o'clock, come back about 5:30 or 6 in the afternoon. And that was the main attraction of transportation. Horseback and foot was the main source of transportation, but if you had a dime, you could ride the train. And few of us could manage a dime occasionally, but not too often. But I'm well familiar with the convenience that we have now that we didn't have when I was growing up. Very familiar with it.
Did your grandfather start the boat landing at Bates's Lake?
No, my granddaddy didn't. My daddy, I'm assuming did. I feel like he did. And I've heard him make the remark, he ran 2 boat landings, one on Paul Bar Creek and one at Bates Lake. And I've heard him say, when I was real small, before my mother passed away, that if he could rent 2 boats a week, 50 cents each per day, he would furnish a boat and oars to maneuver the boat with for 50 cents a day for people to fish. If he could rent 2 boats a week, he, 4 boys, and his mother, and my mother could make it. That meant we dug in the ground for the rest of it. But now, other than a few clothes that we got that mother didn't make out of some type of flour sack or a feed sack, we managed to get a pair of overalls probably once a year, maybe twice at the best, and maybe 1 pair of shoes a year. We wear our shoes to school a lot of times on our feet and they'd be on our shoulders when we come in afternoon. And we'd wear them out from the inside, because our feet would be so rough, they'd be worse than the outside of the shoe. But we survived.
Who ran the first school bus from here?
Mr. Red Oak.
Was it a privately owned bus?
Yes, I believe it was. He had a contract with the county to drive the bus and furnish it. And he would drive from Sam's Chapel through Liberty, through Fairfield to Calvert, then come pick us up. Take us back to Calvert. And then in the afternoon, he'd bring us from Calvert School to Malcolm, then go back and get the Sam's Chapel group and go home.
Had a wooden body on it. He
Had
built
a
it
wooden
on
body
it.
on it. He made the body on a truck that he bought without a cab. And they built a wooden body around the truck.
He hauled logs in the summer.
He'd haul logs in the summertime on the truck and take the log equipment off of the truck and put the wooden body back on in the fall of the year and haul to it. I don't remember what his salary was, but it was very big in comparison to times now. But he was very prompt. And occasionally, the Bates Creek Hill on the Sam's Chapel Road would get bad after a bad rain, and the bus couldn't make it up the hill. So we wouldn't go to school, we'd be glad of that.
Of course you do.
Yeah, there's a lot of us remember those times, and we have rode the bus. And I'd like to say this while we're talking. Percentage-wise, the children that attended Calvert School near the border of Washington-Mobile County line, but it was in Mobile County, percentage-wise, was the most profitable school in Mobile County as far as teaching and educating children, percentage-wise. There's more children grew to be prominent people attended that school than any other school in Mobile County. And it was one of the first, if not the first, to be closed. There's doctors, there's lawyers, there's businessmen, there's professional people of all walks of life attended Calvert School under Clarence Lucas's teaching that are professional, respectable, business-type people. And it was one of the first ones closed.
Can you tell us something about the hunting industry around here and when it really got started, or was there much deer hunting when you were young?
In my early years, it wasn't. Back in the 30s, I shot the first deer I ever shot across the highway. I was 8 years old, a 12-gauge gun sitting on a pine stump, and it kicked me off backwards. But since then, the deer hunting and the fishing has been blessed in this area until recently. And it's been overrun by outsiders and so forth, and it's on a decline fast.
When did the people start coming in here from other places hunting?
I'm saying the early 40s, middle 40s. And as of today, there's more people, number-wise, at Bates Lake than there is in the Malcolm community, other than Bates Lake. And 99% of them are from off people from here, not residents from here.
Tell us something about your family. Name, if you will, name the children and your wife and maybe your brothers.
Well, there was 4 of us boys. I was the youngest of my father by my mother. And then he remarried after my mother died, and we had 1 half-brother. And there's only two of us living now. And George, which is George, the one that's here today, he has bought the old home place. And I'm saying this, and I'm almost sure of it. It's in the Knapp family, and as long as he and I live, it'll always be. And we have a family trend, or family saying amongst the family that's left, which we had it before our other brothers and our father and so forth passed away, that we wouldn't sell what we had in the family until we had offered to every member of the family to try to keep it in the family. And it's a family agreement, I'd say, that we won't sell family property until we offer to every member of the family at market price.
And one brother was Crawford Knapp, was Norman Knapp, who was a prominent contractor in
Right.
Washington County.
He was a businessman, born and raised in Malcolm. He attended Malcolm School, he attended Calvert School, and as far as I know, in his early churches and so forth, my mother used to play the old pump organ at the Methodist Church in Malcolm. She would carry us to Sunday school and church when we were real small.